Welcome, everybody. On behalf of Holocaust Museum LA, my name is Michael Morgenstern, and I am pleased to welcome you to our discussion with Effy Pfeffermann, Holocaust survivor from Romania, and Lauren Stevens, president of Right Wisdom and Bright Star Memoirs. Before we begin, I would like to share a few words about the museum. Holocaust Museum LA is the first Holocaust survivor-founded Holocaust museum in the United States. In the 1960s, a group of survivors worked together to create a memorial for their loved ones who perished in the Holocaust, and this memorial eventually became Holocaust Museum LA. These survivors who established our museum did so first at a time when not a lot of people were willing to learn about the Holocaust in the early 1960s. And second, they did so with the mission to commemorate, educate, and inspire future generations. Furthermore, they mandated that our museum should always be free to the public, making Holocaust education accessible to everyone. Even though we are not able to be in our museum's physical space for the time being, we are still able to carry forward their mission. Today, we cater to a lot of schools during this time, and we have virtual field trips and Holocaust survivor presentations on a daily basis from grades 5th and up, and these programs as well for the general public. This morning, you have the honor and privilege of listening to Effy Pfeffermann, who will share his story with you. He also wrote a memoir called Never Give Up with Lauren Stevens, who will be joining us as well. After Effy shares his story, you will have the opportunity to ask him questions and Lauren some questions as well about writing the memoir, and they will answer as many questions as possible. Thank you so much to both of you for being with us this afternoon, and we will begin our discussion.
Who's moderating?
I will start my story. What's happened to me one Sunday morning in Timisoara, Romania. When I came down from our apartment next to an open air market, and I suddenly saw some German Nazi soldiers marching some Serb prisoners who looked emaciated, who looked terrible. The Serbians bent down to pick up some dirty food from the ground, and the Germans hit them with their rifle butts while they were trying to eat that dirty stuff. I get angry, I get livid, I absolutely started trembling. I didn't know what to do, but I knew that I have to do something. My parents, Rosie, Rachel, Zinger, and my father, Baruch Bernard Pfeffermann, were married in 1929. My father died in 1937 when I was 5 years old. And later my mother remarried. I emigrated to Israel in 1949. I worked temporarily in a cognac factory. It was an interesting story. I got a temporary job to work there. They put me into a cistern which housed cognac before. And the moment I had to clean it out, the moment I entered, or a few moments later, I just got completely drunk. I fell with my face into the dirty bottom of the cistern. They had to fish me out and they fired me instantly. Later on, I joined the army for 7 years as an active duty officer. participated in the 1956 Suez War, Sinai War. I was in a scout unit, and I got injured actually before the war in 1953. I finished the army in 1957. I came to America to study, worked in the Israeli consulate, met and married Susan Rosenbaum, a very beautiful redhead, and we celebrated our 61st anniversary 3 weeks ago. We have 2 children, Naomi and Oren, and three grandsons. Now the question arises, why did I write this book, Never Give Up? Well, I wanted to leave my grandchildren something to do. Number one, to appreciate this great country, America, which was fantastic to me. To learn about their Jewish heritage, to be kind to other people, understand the importance of Israel, support Israel and all the Jewish people. Know their Judaism and stand up against bullying, whether against them or against anybody else. This brings me back to the story I started earlier about the Serbian prisoners at the open air market. As I told you, I went down, I saw what's happened, I got really angry, I was trying to do something. And I called my friends and I told them, listen guys, come to me tomorrow morning early, we have to do something, we'll go down and pick up some dirty vegetables from the floor, bring it up to our apartment, wash it, and then we'll organize ourselves into a relay, and 3 or 4 of us will run next to the Serb prisoners and give them the food. One of my friends, who was a very tragic figure, who had a horrible life, Schwarzenberg, asked me, says, well, what will we do if they beat us? I said, listen, I will be running first. If anybody will be hurt, it will be me. If you see that everything is okay, follow me. If you see that they beat me, run the opposite direction. Excuse me. I come from an upper middle class religious Orthodox family. We used to have 2 factories in Timisoara, one for aluminum utensils and a lemonade and soda water factory. After my father passed away when I was 5 years old in northern Transylvania, I was given back to Hitler, to the Hungarians, or given to the Hungarians by Hitler. All my family was in that area of the country, in Târgu Mureș, in Cluj, and in Dej. After the transfer, the family decided that they will keep the factory in Timisoara, and my mother decided to marry her cousin, Jacob Zinger from Dej. I was very lucky that we remained in Timisoara. This was our passport to freedom, that we survived. If I would be living in northern Transylvania, I would have never come back. Nobody in Timisoara was deported, but we had some problems which I will reiterate later on, what's happening more or less. My extended family in Romania and northern Transylvania, from my mother's side, she had 9 brothers and sisters, and from my father's side, he had also 9 brothers and sisters. I didn't know the Pfeffermanns due to the fact that my father died too young, and we spent a lot of time when we were in northern Transylvania with my aunts and uncle from my mother's side. From my uncles, only 2 of them came back from my mother's side. From the Pfeffermann side, nobody. During and before the war, we had about 7 to 8 cousins among the 2 families, out of which only 14 came back. Imagine, from 78 who went to Auschwitz, only 14 came back. 4 were additionally found in Romania, including me, and 3 were in Palestine and later in Israel. They emigrated in the mid-30s. I went to school in Timisoara. I went to Cheder, to a Jewish school at age 4. I went to Jewish elementary school, and I had 5 years of high school in the Jewish gymnasium, which was closed by the communists in 1947. In addition, I went to yeshiva for a couple of years. The Iron Guard, the nationalist, fascist Romanian hoodlum party, they came to power. Sometimes we had rumors that there will be some pogroms, and at that time we went to a neighbor, a Serb lady who was a friend of my mother. She was a dentist. At the same time, our line to hope was a radio, which was totally illegal, but we decided to listen because this was something which gave us hope. We listened to the BBC religiously daily, both in Hungarian and Romanian, and I knew the battles of Stalingrad and Kursk and so on and so forth. We followed the war very, very carefully, and we tried to get some hope from the radio. I broke this radio. I paid the price. I was really punished by my parents. I was a little bit beaten. It was coming to me. Our saga continued, that we were thrown out from our house, original house on the Bega River, on the side of the Bega River. And then went to get to another apartment, we got another apartment, and we were thrown out from there by the Romanian fascists. But the average Romanian people were fantastic to us. Later on, my stepfather, when the factory was taken away from us, the factory was given back to us by the new regime in Romania after the war, when the king went over to the Allies. When they took away, the communists took away the factory, they didn't even let my father to take the pen or his coat. In 1941, my stepfather, who was a leader in the Zionist organization, one of the Zionist organization, received a Nelson certificate, a kind of a laissez-passer, to go to Haifa. We were scheduled to leave on the ship Struma. We went to Constanza. We went to the ship. We came too late. Some other Polish immigrants who ran away from the camps, were given the priority, and we went back to Timisoara. Unfortunately, the Struma was torpedoed at the entrance to the Bosporus from the Black Sea. One person survived. We were lucky. I survived. Another harrowing experience happened to us when after the Romanians went over to the Allies, Marshal Tito in Yugoslavia, who was fighting the Germans, blocked their retreat to Italy, to Austria, and to Hungary, to the north. And the only way the Germans could escape is to come back towards Timisoara. What has happened, rumors started out that the Germans are coming into different towns and setting up some gas chambers. The Serbian people started running away. Most of the Romanian people who were happy to have joined the Allies were running away. And obviously the Jews run away to the east towards the Russian army. We hired a taxi, which went very slowly, couldn't go because of the multitude of people running away and retreating. The taxi driver stopped at a railroad station and told us, hey, get off because I don't have enough gasoline. I want to get home. We get off. Luckily, a train came. We jumped on the last flatbed wagon, and suddenly 2 German planes came and bombed the plane, and we did see the blood and the gore in the front, but we jumped down and ran to the cornfield. The Germans didn't attack the Russians, who were maybe about 10, 15 kilometers from us to the east. They attacked the plane, the train. We ran into the cornfields. My stepfather said to us, look, I'm going to this village. I know somebody here, and I'm going to rent, or I'm going to buy a horse and a hay wagon to be able to run towards the east, to go back to the east. Well, we had a hay wagon. My stepfather sat together with the driver, and suddenly, from far away, we saw some big clouds of dust. Those were Russian tanks. Next to them or after them came big, huge trucks, again with big clouds of dust. Next to them, some smaller trucks. And next to us, we started seeing Russian soldiers riding on some wagons, carrying ammunition, food, and so on and so forth. I do not know. Suddenly, a Russian officer on a horse came by and stood next to my stepfather and talked to him Russian. Suddenly, one of the Jewish fellows who were with us on the train asked my stepfather, Yankel, Vuzokter, which means Yankel. What does he say? When the Russian officer heard that Yiddish, he said, Yidden, which means Jews. And what he did, he hugged us and kissed us. God knows what was he thinking. Probably he lost his family. Probably he didn't see his family for 5 years or 4 years. And I felt liberated. I was 12 years old. I felt liberated. I still have chills on my back telling you this story. My stepfather was taken away for working camp, but we were able to extricate him. We paid off some of the guards over there. Later on, he was called back to be sent to the front, and that was a death sentence. He knew that. He had an injury on his foot. He injected some milk, got a horrible infection, and he didn't go. Later on, I got sick playing soccer in the rain, and I get pleurisy. I was in bed for 12 weeks. My good friends, showed up daily, and I asked one of them to go up to the, like we call it, the boydom or the attic, and get me down some newspapers which were packed in yearly packages. I asked him to dust them, to bring them down because I want to read them. And here I learned my history of Europe. I learned the history since Hitler came to power. I learned the civil war in Spain. I learned all the German generals' names and the Russian generals' name. And yes, I was with the loyalists. I wasn't with Franco, who was getting help from the Germans. Since then, I am very interested in history, in politics, and so on. You know, No, I have to mention this too, something sad. It was anti-Semitism in Romania. And I remember one day, I was going with my friend Schwarzenberg that I mentioned before, that had the guy had a very tough life, and he was afraid of everything. So we went on the street and suddenly we saw three hoodlums coming towards us, who were yelling at us, "You goddamn Jews." Schwartzy wanted to run away. I didn't let him. Uh, Luckily for me, I had steel-toed boots, winter shoes, which were a very good item to fight off hoodlums. One of them came up to me, pushed me. I kicked him immediately in the shin. He ran away, limping, screaming. It hurt. The second one came up to me, and before he touched me, I was able to kick him somewhere, which is very painful. The third one was pummeling Schwartzy, who poor guy was standing next to the wall, like with his hands outstretched, like Jesus on the cross. And suddenly I saw some blood trickling out from his ear, from his left ear, and his nose. Again, I get livid. I just couldn't stand it. And I was able to kick him to the side of his knee, which was probably badly injured. Somehow he was able to limp away. Later on, I found these guys on the street, on the same street, while I was alone. I wasn't afraid of them. I put out my chest and I walked toward them. You know what? They went over to the other side. They didn't want to. Bullies do not want to get hurt. This is what I teach my grandchildren. Stand up to them at all times. Anyway, my boyhood entrepreneurial endeavors started at a very early age. I became friendly with a gentleman who had a store for school supplies. He complained that he doesn't have any packaging material. Suddenly I remember that our German maid, who still worked for us during the war illegally, she came from a very nice family, and she was very nice. And I used to go over to their home to eat some stuff, good food, what her mother prepared for me. And I heard that their uncle, her uncle has some Sturmer newspaper packed in a stable in their yard. And his wife wanted to burn it, to give it away. So I bought them for peanuts. We packaged them in packages of 10 kilos or plus or minus, and I sold it to different stores. My friends Schwarzenberg, David, and so on and so forth helped me distribute this paper. We made a few dollars, and I was very magnanimous to my friends, and I gave them money too. Later on, I did business with wood alcohol because I found out that the Russian soldiers drank up every single alcohol, every ounce of alcohol in town, in pharmacies and so on. So I bought wood alcohol. I was showed how to dilute it, and we give it to Russian soldiers. I sold it for rubles, and I bought from the Russian soldiers different items needed after the war, like glass, like wood, like sugar, and so on and so forth. I even sit in jail for a few hours. I did business with the Russians. My uncles hid some weapons before they were taken to Auschwitz. They took it out when they came back, and I was able to get revolver, a small caliber revolver, but I wasn't given bullets. They knew the patient. They knew that they cannot give me, my uncle knew they cannot give me any bullets. I went to one of the Russians that I met and I asked him to get me 10 bullets of 6.32 caliber. He asked me why. I told him why I wanted to shoot fish in the stream behind my uncle's house. A couple of days later, Pfeffermann wanted to be a big entrepreneur. 12-year-old kid is sometimes not very bright. So I asked him to give me 10,000 bullets. The guy got white. He told immediately, run to the Russian military police. They arrested me. Lucky for me, I was very small in stature. I was very, very wiry, but very small in stature. And luckily, they didn't send me to Siberia. They gave me over to the Romanian police. The police chief was a friend of my uncle. This gentleman fought in the Spanish Civil War in the side of the loyalists, with the communist brigades from Romania. And he told a story to my uncle, asking him, tell me, could it be that the kid that I wanted to sell these bullets to the Romanian Iron Guard, the fascist group, still fighting skirmishes with the Russians in the mountains. My uncle told him, listen, he hates them more than you do, leave him alone. So the police chief asked him, what shall I do? So my uncle told him, you know what? Leave him in jail for a few hours. I was in jail for a few hours. I was scared. Guys, ladies and gentlemen, you do not know how scared I was. I really didn't want to go to Siberia. I heard stories about their camps over there. And luckily, he released me, the police chief relieved me after a few hours. Luckily, I was alone in my cell, so I wasn't bothered by anybody there. In 1947, I came back from a preparation school which prepared me to go to Israel. We went to Bucharest and we were trained for life in a kibbutz. Somehow I got a permit to go when I was almost 17. I nudged the communist militia officer who was in charge of this passports or what visas, I do not remember. And I was allowed to go to leave Romania. What has happened, unbeknown to me, my stepfather prepared me a box whereby I could take all the goods to emigrate to Israel. Unbeknown to me, he inserted in the box British pounds, diamonds, some Napoleon little red, little gold coins, but not telling me what's happened. Well, we went to the customs. My stepfather came to me because I was a minor still, and a very dour-looking, angry communist custom agent checked me out. Sometimes having a big mouth, I started teasing him. I started teasing him, saying that he should check the box very well because it's full of money and diamonds and gold. My stepfather, who had a tendency to collapse, became very white. I was praying to God that he shouldn't collapse because I couldn't leave. But ultimately, the agent let me go. My stepfather hugged me and kissed me, didn't say anything, but asked me that I should promise on my word of honor that that I am not going to get rid of that box, and that I will be watching it all the time, and I should wait for him to take it. Still didn't tell me a word that anything was in it. We went on the boat, or the ship of Transylvania, with a bunch of young people that I knew from the youth movements, plus many older people, and the morale was high. We were very careful not to say anything against the communist regime, because we were warned that the ship must be full of agents provocateurs, of people who are from the police. So we were very quiet. But I remember very distinctly that I went back alone to the back of the ship, and I looked back like, and I felt that I am opening up a new uh, period, a new era in my life. I will go to Israel. I was excited. I was happy that we were able to start our immigration. For one night, I stayed in a camp for new immigrants, but next morning I was picked up by one of my cousins who were in Israel for a number of years, and I stayed in Bnei Brak with him. He arranged me some temporary work, and I mentioned before about the cognac factory. In 1950, I joined the army. I was sent to the Givati Brigade, which wasn't the best brigade in the. It was one of the best brigades in the country, but it wasn't a brigade that people wanted to join. Even though I wanted to be a soldier and I wanted to serve the people of my new country, I wasn't that happy in the Givati Brigade at the beginning. My parents arrived a couple of years later, and I went to wait for them on the ship. I got a pass from the army, and I saw my beautiful little mother and a good-looking stepfather waving to me. But suddenly, my stepfather started threatening me with his fingers. I couldn't figure out what it is. I told the guy next to me, "What does he want, this guy?" Anyway, they came down. I asked, after I hugged them and kissed them, I asked my stepfather, why did he threaten me? So he told me, "Don't you remember what you did to me at the customs?" Well, I realized and wanted to know if the box is there. I told them, yes, it's well covered, and I watched them. They went to Rehovot to stay with my stepfather's brother, who was a high-ranking police officer, who had a beautiful apartment on the top of the Rehovot police station. The 1956 war, I was fighting in a scout unit. And as I said before, I was injured in 1954, but everything is okay. I was able to play soccer for a long time and play tennis for a long time. After the army, I chose to come to America. Without knowing English, it was very difficult the first couple of years. I started working in the Israeli consulate. I was studying, and while an American student studied 2 hours a day, I had to study 6 because I had to translate everything. It wasn't easy. But after this rain is always sunshine, I met my wife, Susan, who went on a crazy blind date. Her date didn't behave very nicely. I saw her pretty face through the fire of a campfire. I realized that the guy is very nasty. So I went over and I told Susan that we will take her home. I had a date with me. Her date wasn't very happy about it, but I told them just to cool it. I took him home. 8 months later, I went to visit Susan, and we got married in 1960, month of February. When I wrote the book, I have asked Susan to write a chapter, and I told her that I don't even want to edit it. She can write whatever she wants, the way she saw our relationship. We had a little differences. I said that she gave me her telephone number, and she told me, no, you ask for it. Anyway, that should be my problem only. But I have 2 children, 3 grandchildren. I worked in America many different jobs, mainly in Jewish education, with Jewish youth movements. When I graduated from San Francisco State University, I was hired by IBM. I worked with them for 7 years. Later on, I joined a number of friends, and I worked in real estate. At the same time, at this time, I joined APAC, and later on, I became very active when I was in the National Executive Committee. While Oren was already an adult, I took him to see Timisoara and all the cities in Transylvania. I wanted him to see my background, where I'm coming from. Unfortunately, my daughter Naomi couldn't make it, and I had it only with Oren. So we went with Oren to see different places, my uncle's houses, and so on and so forth. But towards the end of the day, we went by a little plaza, and I saw a sculpture. The sculpture was made by a Jewish sculptor from Turgumurish, who had an old man holding a child's hand, had his wife holding another baby, and then the wife holding a child in the hand and a child next to her. The husband was missing because probably he was in different war camps. When Oren and I saw this one, we just started crying loudly. We fell on each other's, we embraced each other. We were crying loudly. Probably some people went by because it took a few minutes until we cried. It was something that really hit me. It hit me. I felt that my family is there. Those cousins and uncles and uncles. I had only one grandpa, and this is something which I shall never forget. Neither will Oren. I think some of you who didn't take your grandchildren to your parents or grandparents' roots, it would be a good idea to take them. Before I conclude, I would like to read a poem, a part of a poem which my mother gave me when I was a young boy. It is translated to English, and this inspired all my life. The message of this poem is at the core of never give up, and what inspired my life motto. And here is the poem. Before you are struggles. Before you is your future. The weak one wilts. The strong one stands up. Do you know what strength is? It is your will, which sooner or later is going to bring you success. I would like to thank again the museum for having me as a guest. I would like to thank the CEO, Beth Kane, who suggested that I should do that, and Mike Morgenstern and Sofina, who run this webinar. I would like to thank again Lauren Stevens, who helped me write the book. She was my ghostwriter. Sebastian, my assistant, without whom I couldn't have done this webinar. He was fantastic. And most importantly, last but not least, my wife, Susan, who was behind me all these 61 plus years and writing the book and so on and so forth. I would like to thank my two children who were really very helpful with this webinar. And thank you people for listening. And now I'm open to any question.
Thank you so much for sharing with us this afternoon. We have comments from our visitors thanking you very much for sharing. If anybody has any questions, please feel free to type them in. Again, those watching on Facebook, you can use the comments. Those on Zoom, use the Q&A box. Let's see, we do have one question. Was it hard to convince your grandchildren about the importance of the existence of Israel?
I don't know if it was hard, but I always tried. And I want to make sure that they know about Israel. I even dreamed my grandson joined the Israeli army. Their mothers didn't like it. Okay. Did I answer the question, Michael?
Yes, thank you so much. This is a question then so we'll start with, when did you decide to write this book and how did you connect with Lauren?
Well, it's very interesting. It's a very good question. I decided to write this book after I received a book from my cousin who wrote a book about his escapades in Hungary. I read the book. I remember I received them. I read them on the kitchen island, standing for 4 hours. And you know what? After I read it, I said, if Erwin can write a book, so can I. And I did it. Beside that, I always knew that I have to do something to give my grandchildren some guidelines, and because I had a good experience. I lived under before the war, after the war, during the Russian liberation, under a couple of years of communism. I was in Israel, I was in the army, I came to America. I had a very good background to put it together. But after I have decided why I want to write the book, meaning to deliver these messages, I decided that I will need a ghostwriter. I'm a good storyteller, I think. I was told that I'm a decent storyteller, but I didn't know how to write. I found Lauren after I interviewed about 5 different people, and I just couldn't feel in my kishkes comfortable to work with them. I met Lauren, I fell in love with her and her assistant. They wrote the book, we became good friends, and that's my luck. And in the meantime, Lauren is a very successful book writer, and I am happy to tell you that she's my friend.
Thank you so much. And Lauren, why don't you please introduce yourself a little bit? I gave a very brief introduction, but if you talk about then this experience for you and what it was like to learn his story and to write it with him.
Well, first of all, I have to give a shout out to my associate, Betsy Rosenthal, who was my comrade in arms and worked together with Effy and with me on doing all the interviews that we did. What we do is typically with all of our author clients, we do about 10 2-hour interviews. All those interviews are transcribed after they're recorded, and they become the basis for the book. We do 2 drafts and a polish, and our authors have the opportunity to read through those drafts. Everything that's included in the book are things that Effy shared with us, wanted to tell us, themes that he wanted to illuminate. Working with Effy was a total joy, and he is the ideal author client for a ghostwriter to have, because he's a super great storyteller with a wonderful imagination, a great sense of humor, and he doesn't get tired. I mean, Effy will, if you don't mind my saying, will soon be 90, but he's got more energy than two of us put together. And he loves to share his stories. So it was an absolute treat to work with him. Once the book was finished, we created an opportunity. We published it. It's available on Amazon, if anyone would like to read it, and I hope you'll get a copy. And Effy and I decided, or actually he initiated it, and I said, let's do this. We wanted to share his book with other Holocaust education institutions around the country. Effy sent a letter inviting people to subscribe to his book. And I think, I don't know exactly the number, but maybe 30 institutions took up his invitation, and those books are now in their collections. And he's been invited to speak, as he is today, with a number of other organizations to share his story with their membership and those who tune in. But what I do want to also say is that Effy and I became great friends. I feel part of the Pfeffermann family. I hope Effy feels that way too about me.
I do.
And it's been a real privilege and a joy to work with him. I do want to share one quick little story which shows you Effy's great gift. I was approached by my agent to write a very ambitious book from some people in New Jersey whose family had lived in Vienna, had emigrated to Shanghai. Many of you know that Shanghai became a safe haven, and over 20,000 Jews emigrated to Shanghai. And that family met a Chinese family in Shanghai. The children of these two families were studying music at the Shanghai Conservatory of Music and had a secret love affair and married. And the sons of that union wanted to write a book about their parents and the journey that these two families went on. And I was approached by my agent to submit several chapters as a sample, to qualify for doing this book. And I talked to Effy and I said, I don't really know if first of all, they live in New Jersey. How am I going to do this? Am I up to this task? And he said, you absolutely must submit your qualifications and do everything you can to get this project. It's got your name written all over it. So really, not to disappoint Effy, I went ahead and submitted my credentials. I ended up writing 3 chapters because I was so interested in the history and the story, and I knew nothing about Shanghai and all of the machinations of getting Jews into Shanghai, and that, of course, saved their lives. And I was selected, and P.S., 3 years later, the book Thrown Upon the World was published by a subsidiary of Simon & Schuster, and it's now being considered as a multi-part series for television. But if it hadn't been for Effy and his amazing gift to encourage people, it never would have happened. He's a born coach, whether it's on the soccer field or in business or through his, through friendship. So I want to publicly, officially thank Effy for being in my corner and making sure that I followed that opportunity. So Effy, thank you so much.
I love you.
Thank you.
Thank you so much for sharing that. We have some questions, and I apologize if I mispronounce your name, from Owan in Cluj, and she says, "Can you tell the story with the leather jacket from Timisoara?"
Who is asking this?
This is Owana from Cluj,
Oh, what
and
up?
she says, "Can you
Is-
tell?"
I do
Yes.
not know
And
this.
by the way, I want to let the audience know we have we have audience from Romania and Israel. So Alana says, "Can you tell the story with the leather jacket from Timisoara?"
Oh, I know. I got help from my wife. Thank you, Anna. Yes, we lived in a house, and in the house, it was a leather goods store. The owner of that store, if I remember correctly, this was over 70 some years ago, was Mr. Golomb. And he had some beautiful leather jacket on him. The Russians had certain weaknesses. Number one, they wanted booze. Number two, they loved leather jackets. They loved watches. It wasn't very often you see a Russian guy with 7 Doxa watches, very expensive watches on their hand. So Mr. Golomb came up from his store, and a drunken Russian soldier yelled at him, "Stoy," which means in Russian, "stop." Mr. Golomb didn't hear it. He didn't know Russian. Guy shot him in the back with a bullet or two. Went next to him. He wasn't dead yet. He took off his coat, put it on himself, and walked away. So the Russians loved. It wasn't a jacket, Wana, and thank you for asking this question. I love you. Wana worked with me for a number of years, and I am very happy to tell you that she's among the many Romanians who worked with me, and they were fantastic. They were supportive, and Romania can be very proud of their young professionals.
Thank you so much for sharing that. Other question, what happened to your good friend who helped you?
Schwarzenberg worked with me when I came. He never came to Israel. I went with my wife in 1977 to visit Timisoara. I tried to convince him, and my smart wife told him, "Forget about it. He will never go." He was afraid. Anyway, he remained in Timisoara. He was married, and when I found him, I found out that he's working for peanuts, for nothing, for a lawyer. I told him, "Schwarzi, come with me, work with us, work with me." By the way, I always told my Romanian friends and all the people who work with me, you don't work for me, you work with me. Remember that. That's very important to know. He died eventually. He died in Timisoara.
Thank you so much. Another question we have is, did you find the Russian soldiers as bad as the German soldiers?
No, at the beginning, I loved the Russian soldiers. I loved them. The only thing is I didn't do with them. I didn't drink with them, and I didn't smoke with them. But I loved them at the beginning until, because of them, our factory was taken back again by the communists, and because of their behaviors during Stalin's time at the end, and all the rest of them. I don't like them right now, and I want to be public about it.
Thank you very much. What happened to the box that you talked about?
Oh, the box was opened up. We had diamonds in them. We had a lot of English pounds in them, and we had a bunch of Napoleon coins from France, gold coins, which were very expensive. The money was used to buy a small, nothing apartment in the, near Bnei Brak. The houses at that time, they were horribly expensive. And but at least my parents were able to buy a small apartment.
Thank you very much. Your friend, and I apologize if I mispronounced your name, I don't know Romanian. Vladic George.
Oh, Gitza Vladic. Gitza used to work as a guard in a hotel, which previously used to be Ceausescu's villa. You know, when he came to town, I don't think he was ever there, but maybe his, how do you call it, his copies, certain people who look like Ceausescu came there. He worked there as a guard in the hotel. I liked him. He became my masseur at the beginning, later on become my driver and then the bodyguard. Gitza is a very interesting thing, and I love to see how he is developing. As a matter of fact, he has a conversation with my son on LinkedIn for quite a while. Gitza has two sons. He's a great guy, and here is a fellow who really pulled up his britches, went to school, and is getting better every time and succeeding. Did I answer the question?
Yes, thank you. And remind us, what year did you come to the United States?
I came in if I remember correctly, 1959. I think, 58, 59.
And can you talk a little bit about your career in the United States?
Yes. I graduated from California State University. I was hired by IBM and I worked 7 years, like I said in my speech before. Prior to that, when I came here, I was accepted to work in the Israeli consulate as a guard and as a court clerk because of my army service. I was cleared for security. So I got a job. I got a little hall as my place where I could sleep. I worked in gas stations. I worked in stores. I remember I worked in a store as a box boy, and the manager came to me and said, "Hey, kid, you are too small for this job. Get yourself a better job somewhere else." So anyway, he let me work in the market for a while. I started working as a principal, as a Hebrew teacher, as a principal of a Hebrew school. Later on, I was given a fantastic job in San Francisco, running a school for 400 children. And when I left IBM, I left to work with some friends of mine. We did work in real estate. The idea was that I should teach them something about what did I learn in management in IBM. I could tell you one thing, I didn't teach them anything, but I picked up every bit of their bad habits. They are great friends, they were good partners, and then in 1991, I had a heart attack in America, in Israel. I came back, and later on I started working. What? I started working, doing some consulting in Romania, but my work in America was mainly in IBM and in real estate.
Thank you very much. And I wanted to let everybody know who's watching on Zoom that I just put a link in the chat for the book on Amazon. Um, Lauren, was there anything else that you wanted to share that stands out to you about the experience of learning this story and about getting to know Effy and his family?
Whenever I work with someone, it becomes a very intimate process. And Effy used to kid me, and he'd say, you know more about me than almost anyone. So I don't know if he still feels that way, but you know, again, we become great friends, and Effy and Susan have been so cordial to me and to my husband and to my son Josh. And it's just been a joy, really, to know Effy. I consider myself so lucky to have a career that puts me together with wonderful people um, whose lives, you know, are shared with me, and I have the opportunity to put their thoughts on paper and to create a legacy for them that others can uh, pick up and read. And with a lot of people, they share the same motivation as Effy does. They want to share their life experience with their children and with their grandchildren. And I have so enjoyed hearing some of the reaction of Effy's grandchildren to the stories that he incorporated in his book. One of his grandsons kind of read between the lines and asked him some very pointed questions. I think at the time he was only 11 or 12, but he got the story behind the story. And, you know, that was a marvelous moment. I've also had the experience of what got me started in this whole enterprise, and I began really not even seeing it as a business. I wanted to write my mother's life story, and we did, you know, work together for about 3 years. She lived in New York at the time, and it was a bit of a challenge going back and forth from LA to New York. And the book ended up being, you know, a very satisfying enterprise. It was called I Turned a Key and the Birds Began to Sing. The title is appropriate because she was an opera singer. And after my mom passed away, my son, or maybe it was before she passed away, my son read the book. And he said to me, Mom, I wish I had known all of these things about grandma, you know, early on. And, you know, that was a real gift to me, and, you know, to my mother as well, to realize that sharing those stories were so meaningful to her grandson. I will also tell you that when my mother did pass away, we had a small service for her in New York at the synagogue and cemetery from the Spanish Portuguese synagogue. Some of you may know about it, on the west side of Manhattan. And I was asked to do the eulogy, and I picked some passages from the book, and it was a chance to give my mother you know, to give her voice one last time, which was very meaningful and very emotional. I'll also say that I worked with Dr. Moses Spira and his wonderful wife. Shosh may be watching. And I wrote his book called The Candelabra and the Prayer Book. And I think it was his son who read from the book at their memorial service for their father. And so these books have many applications, but most importantly, I think it's the one of sharing to the next generation and the generation after that one, because it's really the stories that are the most important, far beyond the possessions that one might leave behind. It's
That's
those
one too.
memories.
Wait, let me try.
So I don't know if I've answered the question,
Yeah.
but again, it was a great honor to work with Effy.
Thank you so much for your answer. Effy, can you please share the story of when people at IBM asked you to change your accent?
Oh, I remember. I had a heavy accent. I was working downtown Los Angeles. I was the only Jewish person. No, the only Israeli. There was one other Jewish guy. One day, my manager, who really was great, he liked me. He told me at the beginning, before he hired me, he says, I want you to know that you are hired 87% because you are doing what I am doing. Well, I went to school. I didn't have what to eat, and I helped my mother. So did you. So he says, but you know, you have a good attitude, you are hard workers, you are funny, you are enjoying what you are doing. And he said, listen, I want you to go to a special school to learn diction. So I looked at him, I said, listen, Mr. Frockman, I ain't going nowhere. I know I have an accent, and I know that when I will be talking with somebody, they will remember Effy Pfeffermann with an accent. That's good enough for me. I don't need it. And I'm glad that I didn't listen to him. I still have an accent, and probably when the time comes to say goodbye, to check out, I will still have an accent. And I am proud of it.
Thank you so much. So when at the beginning of your talk, you said that you want to teach people against bullying, and you like to speak out against bullying. To conclude, what do you think the best way is that we can do that? And also, what would you like people who are listening to your story to take away from it? What lessons would you like them to learn from listening to you?
Okay, it's an excellent question because this one came up about 2 years ago. Susan knows that I was very active in APAC. I was active and I was able to do different things. In APAC, I was traveling to Israel on different missions, and now I didn't have what to do. And I found out that and I studied the situation here, and I found that the only organization which has an effective way to fight anti-Semitism, to fight bullyism, to fight hatred, to find racism is ADL. ADL has a different outlook how to fight it. They are very well organized. So I went, and before the COVID started, in 2019, we decided that I will go to Hungary and I will meet with some friends, a friend of mine who used to be in the government. One guy was, for instance, the defense minister of Hungary, who was a Jewish guy, and he was willing to help. And we tried to set up some meetings. Unfortunately, we couldn't. But I'm active in ADL. I was named to the board of directors here in California. That's meaningless, really meaningless. But I am going to help in certain way with ADL to find anti-Semitism. And I will suggest to you that some of you who are there, you should join ADL, you should help them, and you should get involved, because you must get involved. You cannot just sit on the side and wring your hand how terrible it is. It won't do you any good. I would like that people should learn from my story to do what they think is to do right. That's all. I want them to help wherever it can be helped. Don't just wring your hands and complain. Won't do you any good. Won't do you any good.
Well, thank you so much again for sharing your story with us.
I hope this is the most important question what you could have asked me. Did I answer that?
Yes.
To you?
You answered it, yes, and thank you so much. And I want to let you know that you have a lot of friends and family from the US, Israel, and Romania who have been
And Hungary.
thanking you. Yes, they've been commenting and saying thank you so much, and as well as our other viewers as well. They've been thanking you for sharing your story, and thank you so much, Lauren. And again, we at the museum, we teach these stories, and we work closely with Holocaust survivors to ensure that this part of our history will never be forgotten. And thanks to you, you are sharing your story with us so that everybody here will remember these lessons that that you've taught us. So
if I may say something,
yes, of course.
Michael, again, thank you so much for hosting this event. Thank you, Lauren. I don't blush easily, but you made me blush a couple of times, but it's okay. And thank you, Sofina, and everybody who was helping me, because I couldn't have done this one without help of my children, from Sebastian, Paulino, from my beautiful wife. And thank you, Mike.
Of course. Well, you're so welcome, and thank you as well to everyone who helped make this happen. And this is why we do what we do here at the museum every day. We commemorate, educate.
If I can be of some help to the museum, let me know, Michael.
Thank you so much. We're so grateful to have you in our community, and thank you both so much.
Thank you very much.
Wishing everybody a happy, healthy, and safe weekend, and please follow our website for our future and social media for our upcoming events. Thank you so much, everybody. And
Thank you, Michael.
Thank you, honey. I'll call you.
Okay.
Thank
you, Michael.
You're
And
so
thank you
welcome.
to Beth and to my dear friend Perla on your board. It's a real honor to participate here today.
Well, thank you so much for participating, and we're so happy to have had both of you participate.
And thank you, Sofina.
Yes,
Yes.
thank you very much,
Was
Sophie.
helpful over
Who
there.
runs the tech every week, by the way, in our talks. Thank you so much.